had to go with the flaming exhaust out of the back of the car to start this very brief going free because we had fireworks. We had some fireworks during PWR. How is everybody doing? I'm glad those of you who came over did come over. You can clearly see we had 2,000 watching live just a moment ago on PWR, and you can clearly see we have the advanced placement class at 174. What a difference between the regular students and the advanced placement students. Well, you all are going to have to, a lot of things went by, and a lot of you had some very intense feelings, I saw, about what was taking place. First of all, can everybody hear me okay? I'm on this behemoth computer that I have been building. Not sure how well it's working. I had to work 4 hours deep into the night to get the sound to even work. So I hope, how is the mic? Does my voice sound normal? Does it sound tinny? Does it sound different? Does the mic sound different? Does the image look different, better, worse? Any feedback I would very much appreciate, because of course I want to get this right. This machine, I'm going to have to go back to powerlifting again to be able to move this damn thing around. This is think of your average desktop, and it is maybe 2.5 times that weight. It's a bruiser. I'll have to get a photograph to share with you all. It's mostly the weight bound up in soundproofing on it. So regrettably, it's not because I have the money for some futuristic components that take us back in time where everything weighs far more than it's supposed to. So great to see everybody. Jay Easom, great to see you. You couldn't look bad. You look and sound superb. Well, thank you. Xcog says, Mr. Köhne, tips baseball cap. Indeed. Yes, indeed. White Rider says, Mike sounds good. Okay, that's great to hear. All the work that's gone into this thing. Stuart says, sound is perfect. Timmy Robinson, the mic is very nice. Coming through. JBL Bluetooth. Fantastic. Apollo, audio good. Natsock, everything is awesome. Thank you all very much for the feedback. Coconut, he says, sounds good. Thank you so much. Rich. Iron Will, Traversing the Divide, great to see you. One of our rising stars, creating culture in the white positive sphere in service to white well-being. Beer Hall Putsch says, Mike is fine. Great, thanks for the feedback, everybody. Bobby is doing, Beer Hall Putsch says, Bobby's doing great work, but he is not one of us. That is fine. Yeah, we can, we'll go over that. Thank you again, everybody who is sharing the feedback on the equipment. It has been brutal. It has truly been. I wanted to drag it would have been nice if I could have brought the machine out and then had access to, I had to work on the back of it, but I kept having to crawl under the desk. And I'm used to a degree, crawling under, the car, but 50 some times last night, probably, it was a real. Mike Anderson says, Jason, good to see you. Keep on kipping. Amen to that. And thank you for using our vocabulary. And if you don't know what kipping means, then folks, you have to go free. That's, going free. And a couple of you said this. Remind me who you were if you said this. Who said it? Who just said it toward the end of the show? Somebody was writing in the live chat that if you were just going free, this whole difficulty here that was unfolding before us would have been remedied. Crispy says, I hope you weren't speeding, Jason. Well, I was in that video. I was definitely going what the speedometer said, but was I on a closed track, or was I out on the open roads where those speeds are impermissible? Well, I guess I'll leave that up for debate. Way of the World is here. Great to see you, brother. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to have you with us. Yonash. Of course, Yonash is with us. Carlisle, great to see you, dear lady. So many wonderful people. So we clearly see that the advanced placement class is here. Let's talk about a few things. First of all, I think that if you all are ready to get rolling, first of all, some of you were thinking that I was angry while I was listening. No, I wasn't angry. I was, if anything, I was a bit amused because, and not not upset, not perturbed at all, because I know the remedy. We have the remedy to these sorts of disagreements. We would like to be able to work with, now I don't know. Now, if anybody wants to provide me information, I think that we had, Dion had perhaps some information on Gavin, and she was sharing maybe about Q or something like this. I don't know anything about Gavin other than what I saw here today and Mark mentioning him as our guest this week. So if you all have more information to provide, I will provide what I saw unfold in front of us and what I could read in Gavin and what I was reading in the leader of Patriotic Alternative, Mark Collett, our dear friend, what was happening there. But what I saw essentially was, and happening, unfolding quite rapidly, was three, I guess, you had Mark and Laura on one side and Gavin on the other, in a cross points, arguing cross points. This is how it landed on me. So I saw a lot of, and who was it? Actually, it was, I don't want to say, it was Locke, talking about the disagreements based in definitions, based in the use of words that mean one thing for one person, one thing for another person. And I saw that sort of disagreement unraveling. So what I wanted to do, but there was no opportunity to do that, was to pause that conversation and then roll it back to definitions. Gavin, what do you mean by XYZ? Mark, what do you mean by XYZ? You all saw that I did that with that young man that was an abstractionist, and we brought over, his name is now escaping me, that he and Mark had debated, and I refereed the debate. Oh, I almost just had his name again. But right at the very beginning, I asked him to specifically define a couple things for us so that we knew what he was talking about when he said those things. Because when we say those things, and this is another reason why we don't necessarily say, well, let's talk about capitalism, let's talk about socialism, let's talk about these different forms of governance, because there are so many different thoughts about what these things actually mean. And in not only in a given moment, but also in given periods of time, they can mean very different things. And more importantly, and this is where things get very complicated, I guess, is that you can have a single idea at any given moment in time on which an individual who has the intellectual ability to do this can, from different perspectives, hold antithetical positions on the exact same subject under discussion. So it depends on the perspective, and it's important. And in fact, it's vital. It's crucial to really ascertain what those perspectives are, so that you can then know that you're both talking about the same subject from the same perspective, therefore determine whether or not there is disagreement, and then where disagreement can either be amended, or where there is no way that the two opinions can be brought together. So I saw some real differences. One of the things that I saw early on, I don't think that this, based on what I saw in the show today, that this Gavin person, gentleman, is some like wholly awful person or something of this nature. I saw, at least I think I do, and when I share it, and I will share it in just a bit, what I think was really motivating Gavin with some of his positions. And I could be wrong, but I'm gonna provide that nonetheless. So what I saw, like for example, the perspectives about the forcing people. When Mark was talking about saying to the population, you're not going to be allowed, these different non-white groups, anti-white, non-white people, because a non-white person, let's just say right out front, that if there's a non-white person who wants to adopt Western civilization, Western culture, and wants to defend our statues and defend our history and wants to preserve who and what we are and wants Western civilization and Western kind to continue, we love that person. So we're not talking about that person. We're talking about these folks who want to remake our world into their world. And we don't want that. We think that's wrong, just as it would be wrong for us to be in their world and saying, no, you're not going to be able to do things the way that you want to do them, the way that's comfortable for you. We're going to completely change it so that it's comfortable for us and very uncomfortable for you. That is wrong. So, as well. So, Mark and Laura are talking about incentivizing different anti-white, non-white individuals to depart the United Kingdom for other lands. I mean, they'll often say their countries, but I guess as long as they leave to go someplace else. Gavin was saying that incentivizing them, at least, and this is how it struck me, and you all can chime in. I'm gonna look at what you're saying. Perhaps you got more out of it. Perhaps you know more about Gavin than I do. But that incentives based on some studies are not going to work. People are not going to leave the civilization, the safety, the law and order, the low infant mortality rates, the punishment, to go back to law and order, punishment for people who commit things like rape. You know, there's no getting out of it by way of a religious clause. They're not going to want to leave these environments, and also opportunities. They're not going to want to leave these environments. This is Gavin's argument that I'm sharing. They're not going to want to leave these things. Certainly environments where, you know, they have preferential treatment, special privileges in education and hiring, where in promotions and government grants, and not just loans for their businesses, but grants also, and social welfare systems that enable them not only to eat, but get just liquidity, money to spend wherever they want, but even entertainment. All of this stuff is rolled up, and it's not just what you see coming from the government. It's also stuff that comes through community organizations that the government feeds with your tax dollars, stuff that comes from the churches that the government feeds with your tax dollars, and then, of course, controls what is allowed to be spoken of at the churches, that then feeds into these communities. Why would, Gavin's argument, why would one of these people leave the UK with all of this and more, all of the comfort, all of the security, etc.? My question for Gavin would have been, had I been able to ask it, would be, is he suggesting that there is no incentive structure that could cause a anti-white, non-white person to say, I'm going to take that and leave? My guess is that he would say, if he's being fair and I guess broad-minded enough in the literal sense of the word or phrase, my guess is that he would say, well, I as Gavin can't think of an incentive that would motivate these people to leave all of the luxury and preferences in the West, but perhaps there is one that I don't know of, or many, or an entire system. He was also saying that he doesn't want the outcome of what, at least in part, of what Mark and Laura was saying, and that is the assimilation of these anti-white, non-white groups into Western civilization. In other words, in the U.S., we have the issue, it makes it very easy to understand. Do you force the Central and South Americans who come up, all astronauts and neurosurgeons, do you force them to speak English, or do you allow them to speak Spanish? Well, initially, the thought for most of us is, no, this is our country, this is our land, our people built it. And you know, the same holds true for the UK. We create this, it's ours. And so these people, when they come, they have to communicate in the way that we communicate. They have to communicate in our language. That is the like the knee-jerk response to it. But then you have to think about the assimilation. How easy or how difficult is it going to be for these Central South Americans to get themselves a white man or a white woman if they can't speak English? How difficult is it going to be for them to function within our system if they don't speak English? Yes, there'll be systems that will be carved out. They'll make it difficult. It'll make it harder on us when it says press, 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish, and on the calls and the bank transactions. But isn't there something to allowing them to project who they are so that they end up naturally enclaving, which is what they want to do. They want to use their voting strength to enclave. They want to project their culture and that sort of thing. There are certain things that we absolutely shouldn't tolerate in our lands. This is my opinion, obviously. So cruelty to animals, gone. I don't care what religious group does it, just gone. Sexually abusing children or any of these sorts of things, gone. You're not allowed to do that here. Now, there are other things that I think, for example, there was a big push in the United States, I guess it was in the 90s, for blacks to be able to be taught Ebonics. And why not? Why not allow them to speak Ebonics and be who and what they are? If that's natural to them, that's comfortable for them. And it draws further distinction between their people and our people, if you follow me. So there are certain things that I think that we would all agree on are not permissible in our lands. And then there are other things that I think can be put in place. And if you want to incentivize anti-white, non-whites to leave, to move elsewhere, there are a great many ideas. I mean, I could go through reams, and I'm sure you all could come up with others that would make life less, I guess, not less pleasant, because it's beyond pleasant for anti-white, non-whites. They have preferential treatment. If you take away that preferential treatment and all of the advancements that they get, the grants they get, if you take all of this away, it's going to make things less comfortable than living high on the hog, which is where they are today. That doesn't mean they'll leave just because of that. They still have a machete-wielding community back home, a Balishnikov-wielding community back home wherever they came from. So there would have to be other things. And certainly a people that, a Western kind that recaptures its destiny in the form of you and I and all of us deciding that we are going to empower ourselves with going free, that we are going to have the psychological defense for the psychological warfare waged against us, that people would be able to take a great many steps that are not going to result, as Gavin was concerned about. And here's was another disagreement. I didn't hear, now if somebody else did heard this, then please share, and I'll take a look at the chat while I'm talking. I didn't hear Gavin. I mean, he was associating violence with incentivizing people to go elsewhere, but I heard him associating it in the sense of, and this is where I would have sought clarity out of him, is it sounded to me like he was saying attempting to incentivize will fail, and therefore what follows the encouragement to leave is therefore violence. And that instead, what will happen, he predicts, I didn't hear him say that he wanted this to be this way, but that there will be, and if he did, then I missed it and I'm wrong, and somebody can share and correct me, but that there will be an economic collapse, and that life in these areas, particularly, I mean, he mentioned the sewage issue, and it would make things beyond miserable. Of all the things that could go wrong, getting rid of the sewage is the quickest way to decimate a population. If that system isn't working, it's over rapidly. That things would become bad enough in Western countries for these people to then leave. The problem is, of course, with all of you, with us, with me, is that we don't want to live, we don't want our countries to, our countries, we don't want the countries we live in, I mean, they haven't been ours in a long time, have they? We don't want them to get to a point where they're worse than Beirut so that these people will go back. We don't want them to get to a point where, you know, they're worse than Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan or Nicaragua, and then these people say, wow, the machete and Balishnikov wielding people are not as, they don't look so bad anymore. I think I'll go back home. That's not an environment we want to live in. We want to capture our destiny long before then. So I think there was some angst and some anger over this prediction. What if this is true? What if what Gavin is saying is true? What if they won't leave, or these anti-white, non-whites? What if they won't go back home, and they stay no matter what, even if somebody like Mark gets in power and offers them so many dollars and takes away the perquisites, the preferential treatment and the like, and they just stay and things collapse, and then we live in this hellscape as a consequence. And Mark is absolutely, I agree with Mark 100%, that the anti-white regime would turn everything off to us first. They would keep it flowing to the anti-white, non-white populations as long as they could to continue to use them and to continue to give them that preference over us and victimize us, because that's what's important. It's not the preference of the non-white people, it's the victimization of us that the anti-whites are after. So these people would ultimately end up even more empowered as a consequence of a collapse. So I think there was some angst and some anger over folks seeing this possibility that what if they won't leave and it does come to this. This is what's important. If you are going free, you'll realize that these sorts of questions are really unnecessary. They're really, you know, what will happen if before we ever have the power? What will happen if after we somehow X, Y, or Z? These things are premature in the worst sense, and they end up causing division where there need not be division. They end up causing fights where there need not be fights. They end up causing sectarianism where there need not be sectarianism. We are in no position as the white population to be speculating about what do we do once we have recaptured our destiny, once we are back in control of our governments. Mark is putting forward, Laura's putting forward a suggestion about what could be done. And I think that if somebody like Gavin wanted to add his opinion that no, I don't think that'll work, then I think that should be as far as it goes, as far as that discussion is relevant to us and what we're doing. Because we are like, when you start asking these sorts of questions, I begin to feel like we're kids in a treehouse, and we're talking about the power that we'll wield when we're sitting in the White House. I mean, it seems so perfunctory. It seems so pro forma. It seems so unnecessary and childish. And, you know, I'm glad the debate, the discussion, the disagreement unfolded like it did, that, you know, it wasn't, people weren't too much at odds. Now, I'll take a look at what you're saying now. I want to get into this whole, because they get into the Jewish people, and I'm gonna reveal to you all what I think is happening for Gavin, and then you all can give me your feedback on whether or not you think that is the case. So let me quickly jump over, and again, thank you all for showing up. And remember, tag me as No White Guilt, and you'll light up orange. Jules Citizen says that Gavin wasn't associating violence with PA, though some of his framing was rather unfortunate. I did see some of the he expressly said 2 times that Mark is not suggesting violence, that Mark is advocating the exact opposite, a peaceful separation of peoples. He did, though, and so I see that Gavin's point, that he's expressly saying you are not saying violence and you want the opposite of the violence. And then I see Mark's point that when Gavin spoke about trying to incentivize these folks to leave, he then followed that up. He conflated that with, well, that's going to become violence. One thing that I thought, I will say this, was really ugly on Gavin's part, really unfortunate. And I would like, I mean, maybe if we ever have him on tap or somewhere else, perhaps next time he's on a show, he will rescind this discussion about white people behaving badly as some sort of unique trait. So, I mean, he even said, well, we are, you know, talking about the English people, and which never do this, by the way, never break us up. Never. You talk about your nationality or your ethnicity in terms of your distinctness as all of those things that make up your history and come together as your hue of Western civilization. You don't break us up biospiritually. You don't say, I mean, this is absolutely pernicious. You never say, well, we, the whatever group, are less violent than our white brothers and sisters over the imaginary line right there. You never do. We have the exact same biosphere. There's no difference there whatsoever. We have different cuisine, different clothing, different histories, different music, different poetry, different prose, different all of this, and all of that's wonderful. All of these variations of Western civilization, but the Germans, I mean, this implication that, well, we have a genetic relationship with the Germans, and therefore there is some proclivity to mass violence. That was really a really ugly as hell thing to say, especially vis-a-vis the absolute innocence of Jewish people. So when he was later talking about them, so I mean, that was despicable. I wish he hadn't said that. I don't know if he actually meant it in that way, and I hope he will clarify. But that was ugly as hell. The English people are not, or white people who are born in the UK are not more civil than white people born anywhere else on planet Earth. It's the same biosphere. Never do this. Civic nationalists do this kind of garbage. Nationalists of the old school type do this kind of garbage. This is how we end up sectarianizing, and then the anti-white comes in like this viper, and this demon possesses us and then turns us against each other. And then suddenly the white people on the other side of the imaginary line that we're all related to, they're Huns. Suddenly they're monsters. So that was garbage, and I hope he will take that back. This whole, well, there's a less of a history. I mean, I don't know. You all probably were thinking the same thing when he was saying, we don't have a history for doing this sort of violence or whatever. Come on, Bravo Sierra. And I mean, just ask all of the groups that had to, when split up, had to go into conflict against the English. So let's be serious. So we're all the same white race. We're all the same Western kind. We're all the same biosphere. And this, as I say, this juxtaposition between the French are going to slaughter their people, and the Germans will slaughter, the non-whites there. Really ugly stuff. And let's see if he decides to go back on it. So let me see what you all are saying otherwise, and we'll move this right along. He said Anglo-Saxons have German blood, and that is one step. Yeah, that's absolutely right, Miss Jinder. Thank you. That's actually what I was just speaking to. Elronder, would use violence if things doesn't work out as we want it? What he is predicting and would be the only way in his Civil War scenario anyway. Very strange, in my opinion. Also writing, Gavin was basically advocating for the strategy of accelerationism, order out of chaos type scenario, while on the same time implying and somewhat counter-signaling we. Okay, then you say we would use violence if things, right, exactly. Seems to be implying, well, I think he's predicting, and he's saying that they're not going to leave until things get worse, and we're saying worse than they are in Beirut, and we're saying we don't want it to get there. We want to recapture our destiny on every possible level, and we would like an amicable resolution to our differences. Bjarl Push says, Lord Towler in the house, maybe get her on for her view. If she wants to jump on, I will send her the link. She's not feeling well. So if you're here, Laura, speak up. Ambrielle says, hey, Jason, great to see you, Ambrielle. I had a great conversation with her the other day. Underhill is here. Roy Danton, never mind. Found the other chat. Don't know what that's about. JT Smith, please wrench Laura Towler. Okay, as soon as I see her name, I will. Roy Danton, Is it just this channel tonight? I think it should be on discipline as well, but the description wouldn't be filled out this way. Stuart and all the other ones as well. Stuart says, White said, we've made them too comfortable. We need to pull the rug from under them. I guess talking about the anti-white, non-whites. And let me go ahead and say, I'm scanning the chat right now for Laura. There's Laura Roll. Great to see you. Let me all share this with you, my thought about Gavin. Gavin said he needed what? Can anybody jump in with what Gavin said he needed? What is Gavin doing? And what did Gavin say he needed? I'm not saying that, and by saying this, I'm not saying that he is a wretched person or anything like that whatsoever. If he is doing something that is undermining the efforts of anti-white, non-whites to inflict injury on Western kind and Western civilization in a way that accords with my morality and therefore doesn't otherwise harm our people in the end of whatever it is that he's doing, then that's a wonderful thing. I salute him for that. I'll spotlight him for that. And so what he's doing, of course, is he's getting out ahead of these anti-white, non-white groups. And of course, on this channel, we are not condemning any entire group of people, certainly not any of our specials out there, the non-white groups, and certainly not the religion of Islam. We are not condemning the religion of Islam. So just know that. So many wonderful people. We're talking about the anti-white, non-whites. And so this Gavin is getting out ahead of these anti-white, non-whites, and he is contesting the building of their community centers, which they want to build, which they then, once they have the community center, they remake the neighborhood, they remake the area in their image, which is what human beings do, which has always been the case, which will always be the case. We as white people just need to address the mean pathogens we're infected with so that we can understand the world as it actually exists, and then take steps to protect our environments so that we continue to harmonize with our environments because they reflect who and what we are back at us. So Gavin is doing this. What did he say he needs? He doesn't need your votes. He doesn't need your plaudits. He needs your money to be able to do it. And not because there's anything wrong with that. I mean, he's not grifting at least by what he was saying here. It certainly takes money to file these papers. It takes money for his time to be able to eat, if he's going to do this, he's going to need money to be able to do it. What group gives money hand over fist to causes that they believe in? I'll give you a hint. It's not us. I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago. So Gavin, in order to engage in something that he feels passionate about, he wants to preserve the landscape. He wants to preserve the UK, if we're taking him at his word, for Western kind. And I think, what did he say at the end? Something like, and it just proved, and that's why I don't know if you all saw me kind of smile there at the end, when Mark said, what are we even arguing about? I was thinking that from the very beginning. Where's the argument? If Gavin's position was, 95% white or whatever it was in the UK, then you just have a difference of opinion of how to get there. He thinks it's going to end up very ugly. That's one opinion. We don't want it to end up ugly. He thinks maybe that incentivizing will fail and it will end up ugly, but it's going to end up ugly anyhow. So then what would be the problem? So Gavin needs the money to try to preserve the English landscape. And who's going to give him money to oppose this particular group of anti-white, non-white people? Anybody want to make a guess? So my belief is that Gavin's literal interpretation, for example, of Zionism, which was the other disagreement that Mark and Gavin were having, where Mark was talking about the absolutely splendid, wonderful, magnificent, always right and stupendous doctrine of Zionism, Miss Wojcicki, that doctrine in application is grossly hypocritical. That the people who hold the doctrine, believe in the doctrine, believe it only for themselves, and that they enforce and carry out and hope for and long for and put their money behind ideas that are anti-white in nature from start to finish in our countries. This is what Mark was talking about. This is what Laura was talking about when she said, you know, who are writing these articles? Who owns these newspapers? Gavin, on the other hand, was sticking to a very literal textbook definition, Theodore Herzl's Zionism. And where does it say in Theodore Herzl's Zionism that it is, the objective is in part to diversify, to be anti-white when it becomes, when it comes to Western civilization? Does it say that anywhere? I never saw it. So he's sticking to that literal reading. He's sticking to, this is my hunch, I could be wrong. He's sticking to this, well, they have, this particular group of people have been evicted from countries, and Mark likened that to bars, because they were just wrongly put upon. He is sticking to these positions because there's somebody saying, how many zeros? How many zeros? You want to stop some of those community centers from going up? How many zeros? And those people don't have Anglo-Saxon names. Those people don't have Germanic names. Those people are not Western kind. So this is my hunch. I could be wrong, but this is my hunch. And then the discussion then devolved into a Zionism good or bad discussion. And both of them were arguing very different points. Mark saying in application, and Gavin saying literal reading of it. So they were going to go at this cross points until we ran out of time, and that's exactly what ended up happening. What was the other thing that they were talking about? But the bottom line is that if we are going free, do you see now, if you're going free, how Zionism doesn't matter? If you can defend, if you defend our people, if you go free and you love our people and you put us at the center of our story, and where we are the heroes, where we are the good guys, if we're at the center of our story, then you're going to defend yourself against the anti-white, white person or non-white person, whether they're just the clerk at the grocery store who is spiteful and gives you mean looks and wants to slash the tires on your car or something of this nature, all the way up to somebody who is operating a bank and maybe they have as an ideology, the ideology of Zionism, and in application, they are also going to effect anti-white consequences for us in our countries. Do you see how it completely changes? Do you see how white people, a couple things, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what you should take away from this discussion. Do you see how it's able to lucidly bring together white people who otherwise disagree on a great many points, lucidly bring them together, and at the same time, lucidly identify those who actually are not concerned with our well-being? You see, if we were talking about going free, if we were talking about our people at the center of the story, Gavin would have had to make himself very clear about his position. He would not have been able to say, well, XYZ is not an issue whatsoever, because we can say in application, if there is harm to Western kind, do you oppose that? Even if the people happen to practice Zionism, are you going to object if an individual practices Zionism, if they are inflicting harm on Western kind? He would have to say yes at that point. Or if he was concealing something, he would have to lie or out himself and try to weasel out of it with weasel words. I'm not saying that's what he would do. I'm not saying he's got a bad character. I don't know any more than what I saw. He seems like a great guy from what I saw, other than, you know, the complication of putting some consequences together side by side and seemingly conflating some efforts that many of us believe would not lead to those consequences, and at the same time, you know, defending this literal interpretation of Zionism and the claim that, you know, a certain group does nothing wrong and yet they are wrongly put upon. He would have to say, like, for example, we could have put him on the spot. We could have said, okay, Gavin, well, what if there's a group of people, we'll call them Martians, and they're among us, and they are doing things that inflict harm on our country, inflict harm on our civilization, inflict harm on our people. And at the same time, they're saying that what's evil for us is good for them back on Mars. He would be put in a position where you'd have to say, is he white positive, or is he serving the ill being of Western kind? Is he white negative? Do you see how it makes everything much clearer, much easier to understand? Get out of these doctrines of all of these other groups of people. Who cares? I don't care what Jewish people are doing. All that I care about is if they're harming Western kind and Western civilization, if a Jewish person is doing it, if a white person is doing it, if a Asian person is doing it, then I care, because they've identified themselves as an anti-white. That's the moment that it matters. That's where Gavin's attempt to stay in the literal definition of Zionism would have been undermined by going free and those advancing this argumentation. So let me take another look, and I'll clear up any of that, and we'll see if Laura is still here or not, or if she wants to. I'll give you a wrench if you're here. You don't have to come on. I know you're sick, dear lady. But I'm having a quick look through. Timmy Bobinson wrote, in what I just said, it just clicked for him. Thank you, No White Guilt. Well, thank you very much for sharing that testimony. If you're still, folks, if you're still having wondering, how does this work? How does this actually make it easier? How does it make it easier to defend ourselves and prevent these sorts of problems? And at the same time, what's most important is expose those people who are trying to hide behind these cleverly crafted constructions and positions. It exposes them instantly for who and what they are. I just told somebody the other day in the chat, in one of the threads, it was on a tweet. What should I say to this person I'm going to be having a conversation with who is anti-white, a friend? What should I say to them? And I said, to begin the conversation, they want to have a conversation about race. I said, start off right away saying that it doesn't matter what their argument is. You object to any anti-white conclusion. And so we can do the same thing ultimately here. Sismic says he's either a crypto or weak. Well, he could be, I guess he could also be just an abstractionist. Damien says, this is BS. Well, you have to be a little bit more specific than that. JC Stalling says, Gavin has done some good for white communities, but he was punching right the last hour and a half. Roy Danton says, it looks like entropy is not up. Yes, it's probably not. In fact, but we should open it even though we're almost done here. I'll take your questions just to make sure it works over here while we are live. There might be a bit of echo as it comes up, if it comes up, but I will as it's working on it. Yiz says, big oil, OPEC, the house of Saud. There we go. I see we have some financial gifts over here, and I will get to them. Big oil has deep pockets like the nose, and I've seen several bits of evidence. Saudi funds the silent jihad in Western countries. What annoyed me most, and this is Roy Danton, about him was how he was constantly arguing within the anti-white narrative. Precisely, that's where he was trapped, and that's what we're trying to free people of, is being in the anti-white narrative. You see, again, if we free enough of our people, if enough of our people go free and they're treating their mean pathogens and we get into government, these answers are going to become very easy for us. You're trying to, right now when folks are inside of, everyone who was angry about Gavin coming to the conclusion that everything had to come to absolute despair and ruination so that it's worse than Beirut and Nicaragua and these people will go back. He's a bright guy coming to a conclusion in this context. And remember that this context is not going to stay. We've already predicted the big shifts. We had one exactly as I predicted. This is not going to be the context in which we go from A to recapture our destiny. We've got a lot of work to do. A lot of work is in front of us right now to recapture our destiny. And as for Gavin, I mean, as good as the work he might be is doing, your money is, and your time, your effort, your education, your expertise is going to be much better spent in spreading going free than in preventing one community center from being built in your community. If you get everyone in your community going free, he said it's very difficult to remove one of these community centers. Rest assured, if you get your entire community going free, it'll be easy to get rid of the community centers. If you spend your time running around trying to put out these little bit of fires here and there that are happening all over your house, you're not going to win. Now, I'm grateful that an abstractionist like Gavin is doing this because it's better that an abstractionist do it than somebody who is going free or somebody who is in our sphere. We need to, rather than try to put the fires out, we need to call emergency. In the United States, it's 911. What is it? 999 in the UK. We need to get on the phone to emergency. And getting on the phone to emergency is getting out to our people and helping them to go free. You're going to face the community council, the community government, the judge you have to go before, the counselor that has to look at the documentation are human beings. And if they are infected with mean pathogens, if they're not going free of anti-whiteism, then you don't stand a chance in hell of changing the system on any big scale. By the same token, if you help these people to go free, if they build up a psychological defense for the psychological warfare waged against them, and that is what then informs the decisions that they're making on the laws and the rules, etc., in a community, everything will work for us. All things will conspire for our success. The wind will be in our sails. That is why it's so important now to help people to go free, rather than these, makeshift situations like there's a fire here, run over and put that one out. There's a fire there, run over and put that one out. You can be doing something more important with your time, and that is getting to the vagues out there, our brothers and sisters, and helping them to go free so that they can then understand how having a discussion like this is completely obviated by the story by which we are living our lives. We could have Gavin, for example. Gavin could come in 6 months from now and speak with us again about what he's doing, and we could have a very smooth conversation and really lay things on the table about. We could even ask him a pointed question: how many of these people who are funding you to prevent these community centers from going in place, how many of these folks are of a particular persuasion that isn't Western? And just ask. Maybe he won't tell because, that's the privacy that he has with those who are financially supplying this. But you know what? If these folks from this other community, if they are paying, and let me just ask you this, and I want you all seriously, for anybody who might be vexed by this, truly grapple with this. If an abstractionist attorney, or whatever his education is getting paid by another community of people enough money so that he can stop these community centers from going into your neighborhood, don't you just want to say more power to them? Let them do that. Let them pay and pay and pay. They're taking your tax dollars. In every new bill they pass at the government level, they're writing little amendments at the end of those bills that say, oh, by the way, we're also going to have this John and Betty and all of these white people out there. We're going to take some of your dollars and we're going to put it into this anti-white group over here. You're going to fund them to undermine who and what you are, to the tune of who in the United States, it's billions of dollars are siphoned off to anti-white enterprises, let's let this little group that says, how many zeros do you want on the end of the check? Let's let them pay this abstractionist fellow who wants to arrive at, what did he say at the end, 90% or 95% a white UK. Let's let them pay him to do this. And if to keep them happy, he has to that they've done nothing wrong ever, that they're wonderful people, that, you know, if he wants to say that, then oh well, let them pay. This is something that is becoming a problem for them as well. And that doesn't mean that we're suddenly allies or enemies. We are neither. In fact, I think it was an Englishman that said, and I'm going to amend this for Western kind, because this is what we all in the advanced placement class do, is we take this out of this, you know, provincial, oh, it's just our little country here, it's our little country there. We take it out of this provincial mindset and we have a global white mindset, the great white ring for our people. And that is, Western kind has no permanent enemies and no permanent friends, only permanent interests. So if these folks are going to fund this to happen, so be it. Let's see what else you all have to say. Xcog says, Boby isn't a surname from the Shire. Hansa says, Theodore Herzl said plenty of things to reveal him as an anti-white. Did he really? I've read plenty of things about him, some very nasty opinions about his own community. But I don't doubt that he said nasty things about ours, if you say so. You see, once again, what matters to us who are going free is not what happened in the rearview mirror. What matters for us is what's happening right now and moving forward. So let our historians, once we recapture our destiny, write that. I'm not going to quibble over any of that with anybody. I don't look in that rearview mirror at all. You know why? Because there's no future in the past. There's not a one jot of future in the past. We need to move forward. Yiz says that doesn't like government in general, and I think that we'd be healthier people if we focused on making better children, families, communities, instead of trying to quote control government. Links in the shadow says, I think he said he'd repatriate 99% of that particular group, or all anti-white non-whites. Never felt guilty said 99%. One Drop said 99. Okay, so apparently Gavin said 99% he would like to see repatriated. Doomer's Tears says, I think that Gavin is just an old-style conservative normie with the ignorance, misframing, and ingrained bias that goes with that. Let's see if we have... I still don't see Laura. Somebody tell me where she is, if she's here. And then I will get to your financial gifts, and we will answer any final questions, and we will roll out of here, unless I missed something that Gavin said, or that Mark said, or that Laura said that you would like some clarification on. Underhill says, quote from Gavin, quote, there is no group on earth, with the possible exception of the J people, that has the same strong duty to survive that we, the English, have. There is no group of people, with the exception of the J people, that has the same strong duty to survive. Yeah, that is a myopia of abstractionism and this provincial nationalistic nonsense, old school, that we have to get rid of. And you see that at the beginning of that quote, and then at the end, you see an obeisance to the other group, which is potentially born out of what we just read a moment ago, which is some of these old school ideas. Of course, people a little bit older were exposed to heavy meme pathogens that essentially created a religion out of the Second World War and created a group of divine entities in that, and demons in that new religion. And for them, they are never going to call down this group of angels for anything. Those folks, it's a hard nut to crack, but it could also be a consequence, as I say, of the ones who are making sure that Gavin has petrol and etc. food to eat while he does this work that he is inspired to do, are of that particular persuasion. Okay, let me see. Spencer's Thoughts is here. Great to see you. Great take. We need to operate this as a larger struggle than 1,000 tiny ones we proceed to squabble over. Precisely. I don't think that I don't know. Perhaps you all can tell me, when was Gavin suggesting that some sort of collapse was going to happen? Don't look for that. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I have been in the white positive sphere for decades. I have heard 1,000 times that the world currency is about to be implemented, that the big crash is about to happen, that the currency is about to be worthless. I've heard it so many times. It is the most sickening, tiresome rerun. Don't worry about that. If we will handle whatever environment we find ourselves in. We will deal with the environment when we find ourselves in it, rather than worrying endlessly about something that we have no control over. Worry instead about hurricanes, if you want to worry about something you have no control over. Polmus, yes, let Gavin just do his thing. I'd much have preferred Collett hadn't have pressed him on the J people. Seika says, good point, Jason. And have a couple people agreeing with what I was saying earlier. I'm looking for any disagreement or looking for anybody who needs more clarification. Yiz says, preach. Mosaic says, Gavin's plan to allow certain areas to become virtual third world countries just sacrificed all of our white brothers and sisters that are economically trapped in these areas as well. Now, see, this is one of the things, Mosaic, and thank you for saying it. I didn't hear him saying or outlining a plan. Now, maybe he did. And maybe you've heard more from him. Maybe he's saying this is what we need to allow to happen. All I heard, and mind you now, I could be wrong. I was talking with some of you at the same time. When we're on the show, I'm paying attention, the primary attention to what's being said on the show, but it's definitely possible that I missed something. What I heard him saying was that he was predicting that these other peoples would further enclave and thereby take over more and more areas, and that these areas with the rest of the economy would collapse, that this was a prediction of something beyond his control rather than a plan of something that he would like to see happen. Now, the enclaving and the voting to reproduce, the ethnic or racial voting to reproduce in our countries what is in their biospirits, that's happening. That's been happening for hundreds of years now. And it's time to just recognize that as a reality. And it's time to recognize that, yeah, when they do this, it condemns all of our brothers and sisters who end up getting trapped in these areas, who don't sell in time, who don't white flight out of those areas in time. And where and when we can help such people, we should do so. It would be a very heroic and moral thing to do. But if he is discussing a plan, then provide me with some of that information. Jay says, I think your point about who gives donations could well be a factor in Gavin's failure to understand the J people. Yeah, I mean, you can think of, ladies and gentlemen, just think of others thought leaders, content producers, etc., in the white positive sphere over the years who have had a difficulty addressing defense of our people relative to a certain group. Now, just listen to how I view this, and I want you to do the exact same thing, because I am viewing this in a place of love for us, where we are at the center of our story, and everyone else who's doing it, I want you to do it the exact same thing. I want you to emulate it. That means I want you to go beyond me. I want you to not imitate, but emulate. I want you to go do it better than me. What I just said was, there are certain people in the white positive sphere, don't name them, we all know who they are over the years, who have either started off, pressed into service, not because it was a plan from the beginning, or they ended up being pressed into service at a later point because a certain other group of people came in and said, I like what you're doing, I'd like you to focus more on X, Y, or Z, and here's a check with a bunch of zeros. And then these people, what do? The story's not about that other group of people. It's not about them. They're in the periphery. So these thought leaders or whatever, they're not then working for them and harm. You know, it then becomes an issue of these folks, these content or structural leaders, producers, then having a difficult time defending us against the victimization of a group of people, or by a group of people, by the individuals of a group of people, so that they would charge you. As Gavin was saying in his conversation with Mark, where he was saying, I think you're doing the wrong thing by holding this group responsible for the actions of individuals. I can agree with that. I object to anyone who declares themselves anti-white by behaving in an anti-white, speaking in an anti-white way. However, when Gavin is doing that, he's defending an entire group of people, even though there are individuals committing victimization, crimes against Western kind. Suddenly, it's okay because even if they have these individuals, because this group is good, they can never do wrong. No. If somebody is being anti-white, we can talk about them being anti-white, and we can defend ourselves against them. So you see, even though Gavin probably didn't gather it at the moment, the hypocrisy there, that, you know, it's like saying, you can't say, you can't condemn a whole group for the actions, and this is one of our MCs, I'll turn it around in just a minute for you. You can't condemn a whole group for the actions of an individual, but nor can you laud a whole group for the actions of an individual. Another group of people is not all good because a member of that group is writing you a check. That is what we're saying here. What matters is whether or not they're anti-white. If they're neutral, then they're in the gray matter out in the world and they mean nothing. If they want to support white well-being, then we welcome them. If they want to be anti-white, then they've declared themselves the enemy. So you had Gavin making this allegation to Mark when he was doing the exact same thing on the flip side. Maybe he was aware of it. Maybe he's not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he has some clarification, and if he heard this, he would say, well, I'd like to speak to that, because if I'm not saying that this entire group is good because X, Y, or Z. Let me get to some more of what you all have been saying and financially gifting. Moy, Toby, this is actually showing up in the, if you financially gifted, I can't see it at the moment. I might be able to see it later. So I apologize. You must have, because you are in the financial gift widget. So thank you for the financial gift. And you wrote here, same tree, different branches: Slavic, German, Celtic, Latin, Hellas, Baltic, and other European brothers and sisters. I missed the Slava. Yes, indeed. No, you didn't. Well, okay. But yes, we're the exact same. And we need to see ourselves as a single people. So thank you very much for that. And we have a financial gift that I can't see how much was financially gifted, but thank you very much for that. From Hansa, writing, Gavin seemed more worried about the, quote, terrible things which the native English, quote, may do if they regain power, rather than what alien peoples are doing against white people now. Well, precisely. And I think, again, that is where I can't speak for Gavin, but that is certainly where, for me, when I heard him talking about, well, I'm just really worried that these non-white people might get hurt if we don't, that is the stereotypical civ nat. And that's probably why a lot of people were saying, this guy just sounds like one of these, old school civ nats who's terribly concerned about them and whether or not they will be harmed, when he needs to be focused on us and the harm that is being carried out against us. Mark was absolutely correct to say that the anti-white regime and these communities, if things get much worse economically, with the pandemic, etc., that greater harm will be inflicted on us rather than on them. I think perhaps that what Gavin was doing was just reciting a meme pathogen that was, it was numerous meme pathogens that cause white people to come to the belief that villainy signaling concern for non-white welfare has social credibility, has moral credibility. So he's been exposed to meme pathogens, just like the rest of us, over the course of his life. And he has concluded as a consequence of these MPs that if I'm concerned about non-white welfare, then I'm seen as moral by my peers. I have social credibility because of it, professional credibility because of it. And then he ends up saying it. Now, if Gavin were put on the spot, and I guess he kind of was by Mark, but you all can determine for yourself where, Mark was saying, no, it's our people that are being harmed. Did Gavin actually say, I didn't hear it, that he doesn't want harm to come to our people? He's, more concerned. Now, we here in Going Free, I don't want harm, and we don't want harm to come to anybody. I want every family out there, irrespective of their race, to build nothing but loving, happy memories with their families, take wonderful photos that they can talk about on into old age and videos, and have wonderful lives. I want them all to have that. And I want us to have that too. And that means that we're going to get rid of all of this infliction of harm. And if anti-white people don't like that, then we will definitely come up with steps to prevent them from harming us, whether they like it or not. Bottom line. And I don't care whether they wear one kind of hat or one kind of turban or one kind of headdress, or I don't care what their faces look like. I don't care genetically what they are. I don't care what they eat. I don't care if it stinks or smells good. I don't care about any of that. If they're harming us, they've got to go. David Marcus, financially gifting $10. I can see that. Writes, great analysis, Jason. What he was saying about disgusting Fabian society was correct. Yeah, that's another great point. And thank you for bringing that up. I had forgotten. Gavin, if you go up against a conversation, this is another reason why Going Free is infinitely more powerful than all of these other methods. Somebody like Gavin, some abstractionist out there, can be well-versed in all of these different groups, these groups that are absolutely not of another persuasion. They're staffed from top to bottom by white people who are anti-white, white people, just like in government right now. And this is the argument. You all have faced it. I'll give you the MC, the meme curative right now. And again, if you don't know what that stuff is, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you came over, you've never been here before, it's time to take the step up and to start going free, ladies and gentlemen. You'll be much better empowered to help Mark, to help Laura with the great work that they're doing if you go free. So what anti-whites will say to you often is, the government is full of white people. What's the problem? What's your answer been to that? People like Gavin and the like, they are able to point to Fabian society. They're able to point to all of these societies and say, look at all of the white people involved. Look at the white financiers even. And then what ends up happening by folks who take these old argumentation tactics is they then have to go into these sort of esoteric conspiracies. Well, this other group is then funding through this, then that, then this, and then it comes through this individual, and then it goes to this group. But still, these people are there. Still, these anti-whites are there. it's an argument you don't have to have. Just sidestep the great thrust they have in fencing. Just think of that great thrust forward. Just sidestep, parry that, and smack them in the face. You don't have to have that conversation. All that matters is whether or not these people in the Fabian Society or in the World Federation of the ideology that starts with a Z doing X, Y, or Z, all that matters is if they're anti-white. And then you can say to Gavin, okay, Fabian Society, anti-white. This other group in application that practices this ideology, anti-white. What do you have to say now? Do you agree that both are bad? Do you agree that both are bad when they inflict harm on Western kind? Now, if Gavin, what do you think Gavin would have said, ladies and gentlemen, if I had said to him, Gavin, is it bad for this particular group that you're talking about? Would it be bad if a big group of them, a big group of their financiers, would it be bad if they are inflicting harm on Western kind of Western civilization? If they're funding these other peoples, these anti-white non-whites to come into our communities, can you condemn that whole group? And then let's see. I mean, does he really get, because you'll know then. You'll know whether or not he, if he gets a little slippery there, then what he's thinking about is he's thinking about Mr. and Mrs. Surname different than ours, and Mr. and Mrs. surname different than ours that are writing those checks with the zeros. If he can't say, well, that whole group that is actively working, that happens to be staffed from top to bottom and financed from top to bottom by this other group, if he can't say that that whole organization is harmful to us and anti-white, then you might see a fissure there that he would have to amend, or he would have to just move right along. We would know exactly what was going on in his life. So once again, do you see how going free outs people who would otherwise hide behind, but what about the Fabian strategy? But what about, and then have you seen these debates I have where you have people come out and they'll talk about all the people who own the banks. And then you'll have these other folks come out and they'll say, well, let me tell you about all of these others who are not of that particular persuasion who own banks. What do you think the audience, your average vagues out there, comes away with? Well, maybe they're both telling the truth. Maybe there are big bank owners of both sides, maybe, and yet they still don't have a people out of it. They still don't have someone to defend. They still don't have a community that has to be defended for their own well-being. Go free. 156 viewer, financially gifting $3. Thank you very much. Could fighting planning applications, for example, be used to awaken people to white well-being? It very well may. Maybe you're the person who will figure out how to point out. I mean, you'll have to, in my estimation at the moment, you'll have to be letting the community know that another one of these centers is going up. Maybe you can juxtaposition the Western nature of the area where it's going to go with what has happened in the areas where these things have gone up, and you can show the community. But of course, as Gavin is accurately pointing out, the moment you discuss the nature of the biospiritual nature of it, the moment you discuss that, then you're almost assuredly going to lose the act, preventing them from putting up the community center. But is that what's important relative to going free? No. What's important is that you wake people up going free. So absolutely, you can bring a great awareness in the community to what's going to happen to them as a consequence. I can tell you right now, I could tell you, if you were here with me outside of DC right now, I can take you to areas that don't look like they did before these centers have gone up. DF, financially gifting $3. Thank you so very much. Writing www, White Wellbeing Wednesday. Amen to that. So that looks like those are all the financial gifts on Entropy. I'll see if we have any more, and then we will, and any more questions over on Cash App. We'll see if we have any more questions, and then we'll check out. I wanted to make sure we touched upon these things because they were all important. And once again, we're seeing just 300 out of the 2,000 that we're watching. You all are the advanced placement class, and you are the ones that are going to make the change. You are the apostles who are going to bring this curative contagion to our brothers and sisters around the world so that they too can be empowered as you have been empowered, so that they too can out those in their midst, so that they who are not in service to white well-being, but they seem like they might be, they too can see through to the depths of a potential disagreement, to where the disagreement falls relative to or vis-a-vis these discussions about white well-being and other biospirits and what's happening in our community. Zero Talent over here on Cash App, thank you very much for the financial gift of $5, writing regain power from anti-whites by taking our terms. Precisely. Let me jump to the bottom here. Thank you very much for that financial gift. Thank you all for coming over. JC Stalling has it right with the graduation caps. Nathan writes, greetings, baseball star. You were 100% right about the anti-white backlash over the Black Georgia burglar, and also right that they keep turning up the anti-whiteism. Thank you so much for the testimony of my predictions that nothing is special about me. Others have already started going free, and Roy, for example, and the other one, I forget what, the guy that we named him a couple months ago, and they did a better job than me in their conversations. You too can predict all of these things if you go free, because you'll know where the anti-whites are coming from. I'm giving you something that you can take and go out into the world and do better than me. And I hope you all do better than me in helping to change minds, understand what's going on, knowing why the anti-whites are saying what they're saying, knowing immediately where the difficulties lie. Elaine Sabatino says, does a synagogue go up instead of a mosque when Gavin works his magic? I think it's a good question. I doubt there are that many Jewish people to warrant that many synagogues in the UK, but I don't know. Nihalina says, Gavin isn't worth this much time, though. Love ya. Thank you so very much. Much love in return. One Drop says, Jason is in a real hat mode. Yes, well, it's the hair, my friend. The hair has gone crazy since I haven't been able to get a haircut in months now. And so we'll just go back to my old days. I could have played professional minor league baseball, so it's not like I'm wearing a baseball cap just because I'm a good old boy, although I am that. So let me see. I'm scanning through. I still haven't seen Laura. I will happily give her a wrench. I don't know why she doesn't have a wrench, but if I see her, she'll get a wrench. And whenever I see her, and she's one of, we consider Mr. George and I consider a guest host for TAP, so she's always welcome on this channel. Sovereign Eerie says, why is the stream taken down? I missed it. Oh, the Mark stream, is it already taken down? Let me see. If it is, then it is so because Mark feared and yeah, it's gone. Yeah, so it was, what happens is the topics that were discussed there, and specifically criticism of the wonderful people in Israel that don't do any wrong, and Miss Jawiski, Wojcicki. Israel does no wrong and should never be criticized. And if you criticize them, then often, and of course, every such criticism would be unfair, and everything that I've been saying here that sounded like criticism was misinterpreted. And so Mark had to pull the video down, and but you'll be able to find it on his BitChute. And I can provide that if there is nobody else here that can. But if you just type in, don't go to BitChute and search. Their search engine is garbage. Just go onto a search engine, type in Mark Collett BitChute, and his channel will come up. James writes, why was PWR deleted immediately? Well, as long as the channel is there, then it was Mark's doing, and the video will be available on BitChute. Jay says, check your Twitter messages. You've got mail. All right, I will take a look. Thank you very much for that. Spencer's thoughts. He said, just wait it out until things get bad enough. They either fight us or leave. Either way works for him. Yeah, that's unacceptable. You can't wait it out. And I think that he doesn't see, and there are many others of our brothers and sisters out there that don't see another option. They don't, because they haven't heard of going free yet. And if they do, then they'll see that there's something they can get busy doing, working on themselves, working on their friends, family, and strangers to help them go free. They can make a difference in the world just as you can, just as all of we can do together. When there is nothing else to look to, then all that's left is to say, well, a forecast of something dreadful, and then they will leave. But in the meantime, he is going to do this work because he likes to keep the landscape English, and by that we mean white, and at the same time feed himself doing it. Roy Danton, Fraulein Dresden, I put it into Entropy's question widget. Hopefully No White Guilt should see it. I don't know myself. I'll take a look over there. We'll be wrapping up. Aunt Sally is here. We will be seeing Jason. Will we be seeing Jason with a man bun soon? No way. No, absolutely not. Never will do that. I will. But I wasn't going to buzz my hair off with Mark, with his hair buzzed off, and the two of us sitting there for anti-whites to take screenshots of. Good God, could you just imagine? Talk about looking like the ne'er-do-well in the anti-white narrative. All right. I will take a quick look. And yes, it looks like Mark already deleted. Roy says, all right, let me jump over here, and we're going to, I think I covered everything. Roy, financially gifting over here. Thank you very much, dear friend. $10. I salute you, brother, for this impromptu going free. It was really important to quickly respond to this. It was indeed. Well, I mean, I got to listen a lot, so I wanted to share some thoughts that could help you all better disembroil the imbroglio. How do you like that? And we have this over here on the question widget, Roy Danton. Jason, do you or anybody else have the link email to Brant Danger's homeschooling? Fraulein Dresden asked about it, and she's been kicked off Twitter. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, dear lady. I think it is School of the West at protonmail.com. I think it is School of the West at protonmail.com. Please check that out if you would like to get involved with the great work that he is doing. Is there anything final that I missed? Anybody want to ask? Otherwise, I'm going to get back to everything else I've got to do. Unity Valkyrie says, gotta go. Night all. Night to you. Same here. Angharad Celtic, great to see you here, dear lady. I can cut your hair. Well, I don't know how far I might have to drive for that haircut, so it might be worth it, though. El Rounder says, you still have to write to the owner of Arcadia Magazine regarding the translation and details. Yep, that is in the pipeline. Thank you very much for that. Elaine Sabatino, yeah, let's wait until he becomes a detested minority, until we become a detested minority in our own nations. Great idea. Yeah, let's not wait for that. Virginia says, hi, if you need a moderator, I volunteer. Well, thank you so much. Try to show up in some more of our chats regularly, commenting, and so we can get to know you. We have a little bit of a process before choosing mods, but I deeply appreciate the offer, and I look forward to seeing you commenting more in the live chats. And I think that is just about it. Never Felt Guilty, great stream. Thank you. Seika says, what kind of influential people should we mail copies of Going Free to? Matthew Drake saying, thanks for this. Great to see you. Matthew Drake is here, ladies and gentlemen. Another star in the white positive sphere, does magnificent work. Please get over to his YouTube channel and check out the great pieces that he puts together. Magnificent artist. And thank you for being here. A young man with a young family as well, so please support him. And influential people, anybody that you think, and not just the influential people that have their faces out there, but their family members. If you know someone, if you know the wife, If you know the daughter, you know the son, get to those people. If you know the cousin, if you know this, the step or half brother or whatever it might be, get to them as well. Mail them copies, mail them Go Free, mail them or a simple letter telling them that this exists and that they should have a look at it. My guess is that we will continue to see, as I was shared some people in Australia using some of this verbiage on the regime's television. I wonder how that's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what is going to reach our people. And we're going to see it first coming out of their mouths. We're going to see it first. They'll start saying anti-white. They'll start saying white well-being. They're not going to immediately say Jason Köhne and what he's doing over there at No White Guilt. They're not going to say that first. They're going to be using the dialectics. We will hear them use the MCs. We will hear them point out the meme pathogens and how these things are used against us. We'll hear them saying they're white guilting us. We will hear them getting away from the anti-white narrative. They will even call it that before they ever say anything about a no white guilt or a community of people who are spreading this message, because they're going to use what works, and we want them to. We want them with their power, with their visibility, with their connections, with their money. There's no ego here. There is only love for our people. There is only a bending of our knee to the spirit of the West and answering the clarion call that comes from those silver trumpets for our people. That God, that spirit of the West, that biospirit inside of us is resonating now. It is speaking to you. Can you hear the message that it is sharing, that great power? Are you tapping in yet, or are you still blinded to it? Are you still deaf to it? Are you still mute because of the meme pathogens? You have a path to go free. We can do this. When you can, where you can, help to spread this to people. Spread it to Mel Gibson and his father and his family. Spread it to the news reader at your local news station. Spread it to the people you can so that they can have a look. Some of these people will open it up. They'll begin using the verbiage, and then more and more will do so. And you will make a big difference in what ends up happening in our countries, hopefully long before things actually crumble and we have to worry about things being worse than Beirut for these different anti-white, non-whites to leave our environs. I love you all, and I look forward to getting together again to go free very soon. Bye-bye now.